She was not like the other children in her neighborhood. While most kids spent their afternoons running through the streets or playing ball, she would sit quietly by the window, a small notebook in her lap and a pencil in her hand, humming melodies only she could hear. From the very beginning, her love for music was intense and unexplainable. It wasn't just about listening to songs on the radio or watching people perform on TV. Music was her world. It was the way she expressed what she could not say in words, the way she made sense of feelings that seemed too big for her small frame. Her family lived in a modest home. They were not poor, but money was always tight, and every decision was practical. Her parents were kind and supportive in their own ways, but they were cautious about her dreams. "Music is beautiful," her mother would say, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear, "but it may not be a way to earn a living." Her father, though quieter, often looked at her with a mixture of concern and admiration. He understood the fire she carried, but he worried about the world outside their home, a world that could be harsh, especially for someone who dared to follow her heart instead of a safer path. School was no easier. While she loved learning, she quickly realized that standing out had its consequences. Her classmates noticed her unusual habits, the way she tapped her fingers on her desk in rhythm, the way she hummed under her breath, or the small notebook she carried everywhere to jot down her musical ideas. At first, the attention felt harmless, even flattering, but it didn't take long before the whispers and stares turned into outright ridicule. They called her strange, silly, and sometimes worse. In the cafeteria, she would eat alone, listening to the chatter around her. During recess, she would sit under a tree with her notebook, fingers tracing invisible keys in the air, dreaming of melodies that could transport her far from the laughter that stung her ears. It hurt more than she wanted to admit. She would sometimes cry silently at night, wondering if she was too different, if she was foolish to dream in a world that seemed to reward conformity. But in those moments, music came to her rescue. She would play her old, slightly out-of-tune keyboard, letting the notes flow over her like a comforting blanket. Each melody she played was a conversation with herself, a reassurance that she was not alone, even when it felt like the world had turned against her. Music became her sanctuary, a place where ridicule could not reach her and where she could be entirely herself. Her teachers did not always understand her either. Some were patient and encouraging, recognizing a spark in her that was rare and precious. Others were dismissive, telling her to focus on practical subjects or warning her not to waste too much time on what they considered a hobby. This only made her cling tighter to her passion. The doubt from adults and peers alike created a strange mix of fear and determination. She began to understand that if she wanted to pursue music seriously, she would have to do it quietly, diligently, and most importantly, without relying on approval from anyone else. At home, she carved out a small corner of her room as her practice space. It was cramped with barely enough room for her keyboard and a chair, but to her it was a stage, a place where her imagination could run free. She would spend hours playing, experimenting with sounds, composing short pieces, and singing softly along. Sometimes her younger siblings would peek in, curious, asking questions or trying to join her in song. She encouraged them, even as she focused on her own growth, because she loved the way music could connect people, even if it was just in small moments at home. Her parents noticed the intensity with which she pursued her music. While they still worried about the practicalities of her dream, they began to make small accommodations. They bought her music books, a few basic instruments, and even allowed her to spend a little extra time practicing. They didn't fully understand what she heard in each note or what she felt when she played, but they respected her commitment. Their quiet support meant more to her than applause ever could, even if she rarely told them that. One day, the school announced a small event for students to showcase their talents. She felt a mixture of excitement and dread. She wanted to participate, to finally let someone hear the music that lived inside her, but she was terrified of being laughed at, of standing in front of the crowd and having the world confirm her deepest fear, that she didn't belong, that her music didn't matter. She watched the other students sign up for the event, dancers, actors, singers performing popular songs. Each time she saw someone confidently raise their hand, a little voice inside her said, "Maybe I could do it too." But then another voice, louder and harsher, whispered, "They will laugh at you. They always do." Despite the fear, she made her decision. She signed up for the talent showcase. The moment she wrote her name on the list, her stomach twisted into knots. She spent the following weeks preparing tirelessly. Every spare moment at home she practiced. Every note she played was deliberate. Every melody carefully crafted. She even wrote a few original pieces, something she had never dared to do before. The music became her voice, a way to communicate emotions she couldn't say in words. Each rehearsal was a battle between self-doubt and determination. But slowly, she began to feel a quiet confidence growing within her. Her classmates continued to mock her quietly, not knowing she was preparing for the showcase. Rumors spread. Some said she would embarrass herself. Others laughed at the idea of her being serious about music. It stung more than she wanted to admit, but she learned to let it fuel her rather than crush her. Every laugh, every sneer became a challenge she was determined to meet. She imagined standing on the stage, eyes closed, letting the music carry her, letting it tell a story that no one could ignore. She dreamed of the moment when the world might stop and listen, not because she sought approval, but because her music deserved to be heard. The night before the showcase, she could hardly sleep. Her mind raced with melodies and rhythms, but also with fear. She imagined the worst, the laughter, the whispers, the humiliation. She clutched her notebook and keyboard stand tightly, taking deep breaths, reminding herself that fear was a sign she was about to do something meaningful. She thought of all the quiet afternoons, the long nights of practice, and the small victories that had brought her this far. For the first time, she felt a sense of quiet pride. No matter what happened tomorrow, she had already proven something important to herself, that she could commit, that she could endure, and that her passion was real. The morning of the showcase, she woke early, her hands trembling slightly. She dressed carefully, choosing clothes that felt comfortable, but gave her a sense of confidence. At school, the auditorium was buzzing with excitement and chatter. Some students waved at friends. Others practiced lines or warmed up their instruments. She clutched her sheet music and her keyboard bag, trying to focus on the music, not the noise around her. Each step toward the stage felt heavy yet purposeful. She could hear the whispers, the tiny snickers, and the doubtful glances. But she forced herself to breathe deeply, centering her thoughts on the music she had spent months perfecting. When her turn came, she walked onto the stage, feeling every eye on her. The room seemed larger than life, and the hum of anticipation made her heart pound in her chest. She set up her keyboard, adjusted the stool, and took a moment to close her eyes. The first note she played was soft, almost tentative, but as she continued, the music began to flow more freely. Each melody carried emotion, her fears, her dreams, her joys, and the long hours of solitude that had shaped her. Slowly, she felt herself moving beyond the fear of judgment, becoming one with the music. She didn't need anyone to believe in her yet. She only needed to believe in the power of what she was sharing. In the audience, whispers turned to silence. Eyes that had mocked now focused, captivated by the depth of feeling she poured into each note. The auditorium, once full of doubt and scorn, seemed to transform around her. Every pause, every crescendo, every soft diminuendo was a story, a piece of her soul that no one could take away. For the first time, she felt what it meant for music to speak louder than words. The ridicule that had once weighed so heavily on her seemed distant, almost irrelevant. In that moment, she understood the truth she had carried alone for so long. Her passion and persistence could carve a space for her in the world, no matter how skeptical others might be. When the final note faded, there was a moment of silence. Then slowly the applause began. First a few hands clapped, then more, until the entire auditorium erupted. She opened her eyes and saw faces that had once doubted her, now full of admiration and surprise. Some students stood, some teachers smiled, and a few even wiped tears from their eyes. She felt a warmth she had never known, not because she had proven them wrong, but because she had allowed herself to shine. In that moment, she realized that her journey was only beginning, that the road ahead would still have challenges. But she now carried a profound truth, that music, when embraced with courage and honesty, could speak in ways words never could. After the talent showcase, her life changed, but not in the ways she expected. The applause, the recognition, and the fleeting admiration from classmates brought a brief thrill, but the real transformation began quietly, deep inside her. She realized that the power of music was not just in being heard, but in the courage it took to share something so personal with the world. That understanding became her compass, guiding her through the next chapter of her journey. School continued, but the atmosphere around her shifted slightly. Some students began to approach her with newfound respect, asking questions about her compositions, curious about how she created the melodies that had captured the auditorium. A few even asked for tips, trying to learn from her dedication and talent. While this attention felt good, it also brought new challenges. Not everyone was supportive. There were whispers of jealousy, subtle criticisms, and a few students who tried to downplay her achievements. She learned early that recognition could attract both encouragement and envy, and that she had to navigate both carefully. She spent long afternoons after school in her room, working on new pieces. Her fingers danced across the keys of her keyboard, coaxing melodies that were richer and more complex than anything she had written before. Each note carried a memory, a feeling, or an experience she had lived through. Sometimes she would compose late into the night, the quiet of the house offering her freedom to explore sound without interruption. Music became more than a hobby. It was a way of thinking, a way of solving problems, a way of expressing her innermost thoughts. She found herself lost in hours of practice, sometimes forgetting to eat or sleep, so consumed by the pursuit of perfection that it became a part of her identity. Her family watched this dedication with a mixture of pride and concern. They could see the depth of her commitment, but they also worried about balance, about her health and social life. Her parents tried to guide her gently, encouraging her to take breaks, to spend time with friends, and to eat properly. She listened, though sometimes reluctantly, understanding that while music was her world, she still needed to navigate the practicalities of life. These moments of guidance helped her build resilience and maturity, shaping her into someone who could handle both the emotional intensity of her art and the realities of the world around her. One afternoon, a music teacher from another school reached out after hearing about her talent. The teacher invited her to attend a small workshop for young musicians. She felt a mixture of excitement and fear. Attending the workshop meant stepping into a larger world, competing with others who were just as talented, if not more. She wondered if she belonged, if she could really measure up to the expectations of a broader audience. But after thinking long and hard, she decided to go. She realized that growth often came from stepping outside her comfort zone and facing challenges head-on. The workshop was an eye-opening experience. She met students who played instruments. She had never touched and composed music in styles she had never imagined. At first, it was intimidating. She doubted herself, comparing her work to the complex compositions of others. Yet, as the days went on, she began to notice something important. Each musician had their own unique voice, their own way of expressing what was inside them. Talent was not about being the best at everything. It was about being true to oneself and embracing individuality. This insight deepened her confidence and fueled her creativity. She returned home inspired, carrying new ideas and techniques, eager to experiment and expand her musical vocabulary. Back at school, she began to incorporate these new techniques into her compositions. She experimented with rhythm, blending melodies in ways that were unexpected and bold. Some classmates were curious, some were skeptical, and others were inspired. She found herself at a crossroads where she had to balance innovation with her own style, making decisions about what reflected her voice and what might simply be imitation. It was a delicate process, requiring patience, self-awareness, and a willingness to take risks. Each success and failure became a lesson, teaching her not only about music but about resilience, creativity, and the importance of staying authentic. Outside of music, her life was changing in subtle ways too. The confidence she gained through her art began to influence her interactions with others. She started speaking up more in class, sharing her opinions in group discussions, and volunteering for leadership roles. The girl who once sat silently under a tree, fearful of judgment, was slowly becoming someone who could face the world with poise. Yet she never lost the humility that had kept her grounded. She knew that growth was a journey, not a destination, and that there would always be challenges and setbacks to navigate. One evening, she received an invitation to perform at a small community event. It was not a grand stage or a large audience, but it felt significant. She accepted, seeing it as an opportunity to connect with people beyond her school and immediate circle. She prepared meticulously, selecting pieces that reflected her evolution as a musician. The night of the event, she felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. the familiar tension that accompanied every performance. But as she played, she discovered a new dimension of confidence. She no longer played solely to impress or gain approval. She played to share a part of herself, to communicate emotions that words could not capture. The audience responded warmly. People approached her after the performance, praising her skill and the emotion in her music. Some asked her about her process, curious about how she developed such depth in her compositions. Others shared personal stories telling her how her music had touched them in ways they could not explain. These interactions were profoundly meaningful, reinforcing the realization that music was a bridge between people, a way to connect on a deeply human level. She felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced from applause alone, a quiet joy that came from touching hearts through her art. Despite these successes, challenges persisted. There were days when doubt crept back in, when she questioned her choices and wondered if she was truly capable of sustaining a life in music. There were moments of exhaustion, moments when practice felt endless and progress seemed slow. But she learned to navigate these obstacles with patience and persistence. She understood that growth was not linear, that every musician, no matter how talented, faced moments of struggle. She began to embrace these moments, seeing them as opportunities to learn, to refine her skills, and to strengthen her resolve. Through it all, she remained grounded in the early lessons of her journey. The ridicule she had endured as a child had not disappeared, but it no longer defined her. Instead, it had become a source of strength, a reminder of how far she had come and what she was capable of achieving. Every melody she composed, every note she played, carried the weight of her experiences, the triumphs and the setbacks alike. Music had become her language, her refuge, and her way of communicating with the world. As the months passed, she continued to grow, both as a musician and as a person. Her compositions became more intricate, her performances more confident, and her ability to connect with others more profound. She began to understand that true mastery was not about perfection, but about authenticity, passion, and the willingness to share one's heart openly. With each performance, each new composition, she moved closer to a life that reflected her deepest values and aspirations. She also began to inspire others. Younger students who had once watched her from afar started approaching her for guidance, eager to learn from her dedication and technique. She welcomed them, remembering the mentors and teachers who had nurtured her own talents. She shared not just technical skills, but also the lessons she had learned about perseverance, self-belief, and the importance of embracing individuality. Through teaching, she discovered another dimension of fulfillment, realizing that her journey could have a ripple effect, encouraging others to find and pursue their passions. By the end of this chapter of her life, she had not only grown as a musician, but as a person capable of navigating life's challenges with resilience and grace. She had learned that ridicule and doubt, while painful, could be transformed into motivation and growth. She had discovered the profound impact of sharing one's gifts with the world, and the deep satisfaction that comes from touching the hearts of others. And most importantly, she had learned that her music was more than notes and rhythms. It was a voice, a story, and a reflection of her journey from fear to courage, from doubt to confidence, and from solitude to connection. She had grown used to the quiet moments of practice, where the world outside her window seemed distant and unimportant. But soon, she realized that the true test of her growth would come from facing not just small audiences or familiar faces, but a broader world that might not understand her music the way she did. A local cultural festival was announced, bringing together musicians from different towns, and she was invited to perform. The thought thrilled her, but also brought a surge of anxiety. This was no longer her safe room, no longer just friends and family listening. This was a public stage, full of people whose reactions could lift her or break her. She spent weeks preparing. Every morning, she practiced with intention, studying her compositions, tweaking rhythms, and exploring new ways to express the emotions she wanted to convey. She practiced not only on her keyboard, but with her voice, experimenting with harmonies that could make the pieces richer. Late at night, she would play softly, the notes drifting through the quiet house as if carrying her thoughts to some unseen listener. Every mistake was examined, every success celebrated quietly. She understood that preparation was more than repetition. It was learning to anticipate challenges, mastering self-control, and deepening her connection with the music she was creating. Her family noticed the intensity of her preparation and offered quiet support. Her mother would bring snacks to her room. Her father would sit for a moment listening to her play, sometimes offering encouragement or gentle advice. Their presence reminded her that while music could feel like a solitary pursuit, the journey was supported by the love and care around her. This realization gave her strength. She did not have to face the world alone. She had people who believed in her, who understood her dedication, and who would be there to celebrate her courage. The day of the festival arrived. She stepped onto the stage and felt the weight of every eye upon her. The audience was larger than she had ever faced, a mix of seasoned musicians, curious spectators, and people who had heard of her talent through whispers and social media. Her heart raced, and for a moment doubt crept in. Could she truly convey everything she had poured into her music? Could she reach these strangers, touch their hearts the way she had touched a smaller audience? She took a deep breath, reminding herself of the countless hours of practice, the early mornings and late nights, the journey from ridicule to self-belief. As she played the first note, the tension began to lift. The music, her faithful companion, took over. Fingers gliding over the keys, she let her emotions flow freely, shaping melodies that told stories of joy, struggle, hope, and resilience. Every pause, every crescendo, every delicate note carried her experiences. She felt connected not only to the audience, but to every moment that had led her here. The nights of solitude, the moments of doubt, the tiny victories that had given her confidence. The audience was silent at first, listening intently, absorbing every nuance of her performance. Some listeners were captivated from the first chord, others skeptical, still unsure what to expect. But slowly the music reached them. Eyes widened, heads tilted, and by the middle of her performance she could sense a shift. The initial doubts melted into curiosity, fascination, and eventually admiration. People leaned forward, letting themselves feel what she had felt while composing. They weren't just hearing music. They were experiencing a story. Her story, conveyed not through words but through the raw honesty of sound. The transformation in the room was palpable, the energy vibrating from one listener to the next, creating an invisible connection between her and every person present. By the final notes, the audience was mesmerized. Silence followed the last chord, a moment of collective breath held, as if no one wanted to disturb the fragile beauty of what they had just witnessed. Then slowly, applause began, soft at first, then swelling into cheers and claps that filled the hall. She opened her eyes and saw faces shining with emotion, strangers who had been moved by her music, people who had never met her but now understood something deep and profound about her. Some stood, some wiped tears from their eyes, and some smiled in quiet appreciation. In that moment, she realized that her music had transcended her own fears, her own doubts, and reached hearts in ways words could never achieve. After the performance, she was approached by several seasoned musicians and instructors. They offered praise, constructive feedback, and words of encouragement that were both humbling and motivating. Some expressed genuine surprise at her skill, while others acknowledged the depth of emotion in her compositions. She listened carefully, absorbing their insights, grateful not for validation alone, but for guidance that could help her continue growing. She realized that recognition was not the end point, but a signpost along a lifelong journey of learning, improving, and expressing herself authentically. Her experience at the festival opened doors she had never imagined. Invitations to perform at local events, community gatherings, and even school functions began to arrive. Some were small, intimate audiences, while others were larger, more formal venues. Each opportunity was a chance to refine her craft, to experiment with new styles, and to connect with people who shared her appreciation for music. She began to see herself not just as a student or hobbyist, but as a developing artist, someone capable of influencing and inspiring others through the medium she loved most. Despite these successes, challenges persisted. There were days when she felt drained, struggling to balance school, practice, and personal life. There were moments of self-doubt, questioning whether her efforts were enough or whether her music truly had an impact. She also encountered envy and subtle competition, reminders that not everyone would celebrate her achievements with pure joy. But she learned to navigate these situations with grace, using criticism to strengthen her skills and allowing envy to fuel her determination rather than hinder it. Each obstacle became a lesson, a chance to grow both personally and artistically. During this period, she also discovered the power of collaboration. She met other young musicians who shared her passion, and together they experimented with duets, ensemble pieces, and new arrangements. These collaborations taught her the value of listening, compromise, and creative synergy. She learned that music could be both an individual expression and a collective experience, that sharing her voice with others could produce something richer than she could achieve alone. These experiences deepened her understanding of music as a universal language, one that could unite people across differences and create moments of shared emotion and understanding. Through all of this, she remained connected to the lessons of her early experiences. The ridicule she had faced in childhood, the doubt she had felt in school, and the quiet perseverance she had maintained at home all became part of her narrative. Each note she played was infused with the resilience she had built over years of practice and self-discovery. She had learned that every challenge, every setback, and every moment of fear was an opportunity to strengthen her resolve and deepen her art. She embraced her journey fully, knowing that growth and mastery were lifelong pursuits shaped by persistence, humility, and a willingness to embrace both failure and triumph. By the time the festival concluded, she had not only proven her abilities to others, but had solidified her own belief in her talent. She understood that music was more than performance. It was a way of living, a method of expression, and a means of connecting deeply with the human experience. She had moved from being a girl who feared judgment to someone who could stand confidently before an audience and share her truth through sound. This transformation was not the result of a single performance, but of years of quiet dedication, struggle, and self-reflection. In the days that followed, she reflected on everything she had learned. She realized that the journey was far from over. There were more stages to perform on, more compositions to create, and more ways to grow as an artist and as a person. Yet she also recognized the importance of appreciating each step along the way, of acknowledging her progress, and of finding joy in the act of creation itself. Her music had become a mirror of her journey, reflecting the courage, determination, and emotional depth that defined her as a young musician and as an individual. She also began to think about the impact she could have on others. She remembered the moments when her own mentors and teachers had encouraged her, the times when simple words of support had made a profound difference. She wanted to offer the same guidance and encouragement to younger musicians, to help them navigate the challenges and triumphs of pursuing their passions. She understood that the true power of music was not just in performing, but in inspiring, teaching, and connecting with others in meaningful ways. As part 3 of her journey drew to a close, she stood on the threshold of new opportunities, her confidence solidified, her skills refined, and her vision clear. She had faced fear, doubt, and the judgment of others, and had emerged stronger, more resilient, and deeply connected to the essence of her art. She had learned that true mastery was not about perfection or recognition, but about authenticity, dedication, and the courage to share one's voice with the world. And with each note she played, she continued to move from ridicule to reverence, proving not just to others but to herself that her music could speak louder than words, touching hearts and creating a legacy that was uniquely her own. Even with her growing confidence and recognition, life continued to present challenges she could never ignore. The excitement of performing on stages, receiving praise, and inspiring others was balanced by pressure, fatigue, and the complex expectations that came with success. Every opportunity demanded not only skill, but emotional resilience, and she discovered that the world of music was as demanding as it was rewarding. Her school and community began to take notice of her achievements, and this attention brought both admiration and subtle challenges. Some teachers offered guidance, trying to shape her talent in ways that aligned with traditional expectations. While their intentions were often good, she occasionally felt restricted, as if her unique voice might be compromised. Some classmates, previously indifferent or mocking, began to approach her with questions, curiosity, or even envy. She had to learn how to navigate these social dynamics carefully, understanding that admiration could sometimes carry complications, and that not all attention was positive. Each encounter became a lesson in humility, patience, and discernment. The demands on her time increased significantly, Between schoolwork, rehearsals, performances, and composing new pieces, she often found herself exhausted. Her evenings and weekends were filled with long practice sessions, exploring new sounds, refining her compositions, and preparing for upcoming events. There were moments when she felt overwhelmed, questioning whether she could continue juggling all the responsibilities. Yet in those moments of doubt, she found strength by returning to the essence of her passion, the music itself. Each note reminded her why she had begun this journey, why she had endured ridicule, and why she had refused to give up. The love for her art kept her moving forward even when the path seemed impossible. Late nights in her room became sacred, uninterrupted time for creativity and reflection. She would sit at her keyboard, letting her fingers wander, discovering melodies that surprised even her. Sometimes she composed music that reflected joy, hope, or triumph. Other times she poured her fears, frustrations, and insecurities into her compositions. Music became both a refuge and a tool for self-discovery, allowing her to process emotions she struggled to articulate in words. These sessions were deeply personal, shaping not only her abilities as a musician but also her understanding of herself and the world around her. Despite her dedication, criticism and challenges never fully disappeared. There were moments when she faced skepticism from peers, even from adults who questioned whether her focus on music was practical. Some friends who had once supported her began to drift away, preferring other interests or not understanding the intensity of her commitment. There were performances that did not go as planned, where technical difficulties or nerves interfered with her expression. Each setback tested her resilience, but she learned to view failure not as a defeat but as a stepping stone toward improvement. She cultivated patience, determination, and a perspective that valued growth over perfection. Her family remained her anchor. They continued to encourage her, celebrating her successes and comforting her during disappointments. Her parents reminded her that perseverance was just as important as talent, and that every challenge she faced would strengthen her character. Their support was unwavering, and it provided a safe space where she could recharge and reflect. In these quiet moments at home, she regained the emotional balance needed to face the demanding expectations of the larger world. The balance of performing and personal growth became central to her journey. She began to travel to nearby towns to perform at various events, from community celebrations to small music gatherings. Each performance was unique, offering new experiences, audiences, and opportunities to learn. She noticed subtle differences in how people responded to her music. Some connected immediately, while others were slower to understand the emotion she conveyed. This taught her to be adaptable, patient, and attentive to the nuances of audience engagement. She learned that music was not just about technical skill, but about empathy, communication, and the ability to reach others emotionally. During this period, she faced moments of self-reflection and introspection. She questioned what kind of musician she wanted to be, what messages she wished to convey, and how she could use her talents meaningfully. She explored different genres and styles, experimenting with rhythm, melody, and harmonies to discover new ways to express herself. She challenged herself to step outside familiar patterns, risking mistakes in order to grow. Through this process, she developed a deeper understanding of creativity, not just as a skill but as an exploration of identity, emotion, and human connection. Collaboration became an important part of her journey. She met other young musicians who shared her dedication and curiosity. Together, they created music that combined their unique perspectives, blending styles and ideas to produce innovative pieces. Collaboration taught her patience, compromise, and the value of listening deeply to others. She realized that sharing her musical journey with peers enhanced her own growth and expanded the possibilities of what she could create. These partnerships enriched her experience, showing her that music could foster connection, empathy, and mutual inspiration. Challenges continued, but so did the rewards. Each performance, whether small or large, brought moments of fulfillment that reminded her of why she had begun her journey. She discovered the profound impact of her music on others, hearing stories of how her performances touched hearts, inspired confidence, or provided solace in difficult times. These experiences reinforced her understanding of music as a powerful tool for communication and emotional expression. She learned that success was not measured solely by applause or recognition, but by the ability to reach others meaningfully and authentically. She also began mentoring younger students, sharing her experiences techniques, and insights with those just beginning their musical journey. Teaching allowed her to reflect on her own growth and solidify her understanding of the principles she had learned. It was rewarding to guide others, helping them navigate challenges and celebrate their progress. Through mentoring, she discovered another layer of fulfillment, realizing that her journey was not only about personal achievement, but also about inspiring and uplifting others. As she navigated these experiences, she maintained a deep connection to her roots, the early days of ridicule, solitude, and quiet perseverance. She remembered the moments when she felt isolated, the nights spent alone in her room, and the small victories that had built her confidence. These memories reminded her of the importance of resilience, patience, and self-belief. They also reinforced the value of staying true to herself, of maintaining authenticity in the face of external pressures and expectations. Through all of these experiences, she developed a nuanced understanding of success. It was not about avoiding failure or criticism, but about embracing challenges, learning from setbacks, and persisting with dedication and passion. She learned that true growth required balance between practice and rest, ambition and humility, individuality and collaboration. She discovered that music was not merely a craft, but a reflection of her life experiences, emotions, and personal growth. It was a living expression of her journey, capable of inspiring and connecting with others in profound ways. By the end of this phase of her journey, she had transformed from a girl who once feared judgment to a young woman capable of navigating complex challenges with resilience and grace. She had faced moments of doubt, pressure, and fatigue, yet she had emerged stronger, more skilled, and deeply connected to her art. She had learned to balance technical skill with emotional expression, individuality with collaboration, and ambition with patience. Her music had become a mirror of her growth, reflecting her perseverance, creativity, and authenticity. She also began to understand the broader implications of her journey. The ridicule and skepticism she had once faced were no longer obstacles but catalysts that had shaped her resilience and determination. She realized that every challenge, setback, and moment of doubt had contributed to her growth, strengthening her character and deepening her artistic voice. These experiences reinforced the understanding that the path to mastery was not linear or easy, but filled with lessons, opportunities, and moments of transformation. In quiet moments, she reflected on the lessons she had learned. She knew that her journey was ongoing, that there would always be new challenges, opportunities, and experiences to navigate. Yet she also recognized the progress she had made, the confidence she had developed, the skills she had honed, and the connections she had built through her music. She understood that the journey was not only about reaching a destination, but about embracing the process, growing through each experience and sharing her passion with others. As part 4 of her story concluded, she stood at a pivotal point in her life. She had faced doubt, pressure, and challenges, yet she had emerged stronger, more capable, and deeply connected to her music and herself. Her journey from ridicule to reverence was continuing, shaped by perseverance, authenticity, and the unwavering belief in the power of her voice. With every note she played, she continued to transform not only her own life, but the lives of those who heard her music, proving that passion, dedication, and resilience could overcome obstacles and create a legacy that resonated far beyond the stage. Years had passed since the shy girl first tapped on the keyboard in her quiet room, and the music she once played to herself had now become a bridge to the world. She had grown into a young woman whose talent and dedication had earned respect far beyond her early school days. Yet her journey was more than applause and recognition. It was about connection, understanding, and staying true to the path she had chosen despite challenges. Her reputation as a talented musician spread beyond her town. Invitations arrived for performances at larger venues, community events, and even regional festivals. Each opportunity required preparation, focus, and the courage to present herself fully. Though nerves occasionally returned, she had learned to channel them into her performance. Fear no longer paralyzed her. It fueled her attention to detail, deepened her expression, and connected her to the music in ways she had not known before. Each note she played carried years of experience, practice, and personal growth. She never lost sight of her beginnings, the ridicule, the doubts, and the long hours of solitary practice. Those experiences had shaped her resilience, taught her self-discipline, and instilled a quiet confidence. Now, standing on larger stages, she understood that every moment of struggle had contributed to her ability to perform, with authenticity and emotion. She had transformed those early hardships into fuel, using them to deepen her artistry and connect with audiences on a profoundly human level. Traveling for performances introduced her to a diverse range of people and musical styles. She met fellow musicians who had trained differently, audiences who reacted in unexpected ways, and communities with unique approaches to music and storytelling. These experiences broadened her understanding of her art, showing her that music was not just personal expression, but also a universal language that transcended culture, background, and circumstance. She learned to adapt, to listen, and to weave different influences into her performances while maintaining her distinctive voice. Mentorship became an essential part of her life. Remembering how small gestures of encouragement had shaped her own path, she sought to guide young musicians with patience, empathy, and honesty. She shared not only technical skills but also lessons about persistence, resilience, and the importance of believing in oneself. Through mentorship, she realized that her impact went beyond performances. It extended to inspiring others to find courage in their own creativity. The joy of helping others grow became a powerful complement to her personal achievements, reinforcing her sense of purpose and connection to the musical community. Her performances evolved over time. She began composing pieces that told stories, capturing emotions from grief and struggle to hope and triumph. Each composition was a reflection of her journey, a narrative woven from experience, introspection, and observation. Audiences responded with admiration, often moved by the depth and sincerity of her music. In these moments, she felt a profound connection with those who listened, understanding that music had the power to communicate feelings that words alone could not express. Even with her growing recognition, challenges remained. She faced the pressures of maintaining her skills, meeting audience expectations, and continuing to innovate. Some critics questioned her style, while others envied her success. She encountered technical difficulties during performances and personal doubts about whether she could continue to grow as an artist. Yet each challenge became an opportunity to learn, adapt, and strengthen her resolve.
She had learned that true artistry required persistence, patience,
and a willingness to face obstacles without losing sight of her passion. As her reputation grew, she performed in venues she had only once dreamed of. She stood on stages where the seats were filled with strangers who had come to hear her music. Despite the scale and formality of these events, she retained the intimacy she had discovered in her early performances, the ability to reach people on an emotional level, to touch hearts, and to communicate stories without words. Each note was intentional, each melody a piece of herself offered to the audience. In this way, her music remained authentic, grounded in the values and experiences that had shaped her. Her personal growth mirrored her musical evolution. She had become more confident, self-assured, and capable of navigating both success and setbacks. She approached challenges with thoughtful determination, balancing ambition with humility and technical mastery with emotional depth. Through reflection, she recognized the importance of staying connected to her roots, valuing every lesson learned along the way, and appreciating the journey as much as the milestones. Her life had become a delicate balance of dedication, creativity, and human connection. Connections with audiences became more profound over time. She received letters, messages, and conversations from people sharing how her music had inspired them, comforted them, or given them hope during difficult times. These responses reminded her that her art had a purpose beyond personal fulfillment, that it could touch lives, build empathy, and create meaningful experiences. Each interaction reinforced the understanding that music was a bridge, linking human experiences across boundaries and offering solace, joy, and inspiration. Her approach to music had also matured. She experimented with blending styles, incorporating different instruments and exploring new harmonies while always remaining true to her voice. She collaborated with other musicians, learning from their experiences and adding richness to her performances. These collaborations expanded her creative horizons and reinforced the idea that music was both a personal journey and a shared experience. She found joy in pushing boundaries while maintaining the authenticity that had always defined her work. Mentorship and teaching became intertwined with her performance schedule. She established small workshops, taught lessons, and provided guidance to those just beginning their musical paths. Through teaching, she reinforced her own skills, learned new perspectives, and discovered satisfaction in nurturing talent and encouraging creativity. Her experiences as a mentor reminded her that the lessons of perseverance, patience, and authenticity were not just personal. They were valuable tools for others on similar journeys. Despite her accomplishments, she remained humble. She understood that recognition, applause, and accolades were temporary, but the impact of her music and the relationships she built through it had lasting significance. She valued each performance not for external validation, but for the opportunity to communicate, to inspire, and to share the depth of her experiences with others. Her journey had shown her that true fulfillment came from passion, persistence, and meaningful connection rather than fleeting praise. Over time, she reflected on her journey from a shy, ridiculed child to a musician who commanded respect and admiration. She remembered the nights of doubt, the early mornings of practice, and the moments when she feared judgment. She realized that those experiences had been formative, teaching resilience, patience, and the importance of self-belief. The ridicule that once seemed overwhelming had become a distant memory, replaced by a sense of pride in her perseverance and accomplishments. Her story was no longer defined by the judgment of others, but by the choices she had made and the courage she had shown. She also came to understand the broader message of her journey, that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, resilience, authenticity, and the willingness to share oneself fully were what transformed potential into meaningful impact. She had learned to embrace challenges, to persevere through doubt, and to use her music as a voice for connection and inspiration. Her success was not measured solely by recognition or fame, but by the ability to touch lives and remain true to her values. As her career progressed, she found new ways to reach audiences, to inspire younger musicians, and to express herself creatively. Each composition, performance, and teaching moment was a continuation of the journey that had begun in her small room with a keyboard and a notebook. She understood that the path of a musician was a lifelong endeavor, filled with opportunities for growth, exploration, and connection. She embraced this understanding with joy, patience, and dedication. Looking back, she could see how far she had come. From the ridicule she endured as a child to the respect and admiration she had earned, every step had shaped her into the person and musician she had become. Her journey was a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and the belief that music could communicate truths deeper than words. She knew that every challenge, every late night of practice, and every moment of doubt had contributed to her growth and to the impact she could have on others. In the end, she realized that her music spoke louder than any words could. It told the story of a journey filled with struggle, growth, and triumph. It celebrated resilience, authenticity, and the human capacity to overcome obstacles and transform adversity into strength. Through her music, she connected with others, inspired young musicians, and created moments of beauty, reflection, and emotion. Her life had come full circle, from a shy, ridiculed child to a musician revered for her talent, dedication, and the power of her voice. Her story was one of courage, persistence, and transformation. She had shown that with passion and dedication, it was possible to move from ridicule to reverence, from doubt to confidence, and from isolation to connection. Through her music, she left a legacy that transcended notes and melodies, touching hearts, inspiring dreams, and proving that when someone dares to follow their passion with unwavering commitment, they can create a life that speaks louder than words and resonates far beyond themselves.